Hello and welcome to Conversations of Connection, Mental Wellness in Sports and Life. I'm your co-host, Dr. Nina Rios-Doria, and I'm here with
Scott Murray. And we're delighted to have you on as well. We've got a member from the baseball world who's going to be joining us as we talk about mental wellness and what have you in sports and certainly in life. And he's got some great information that I think he's going to be able to share with you. Began his career as a Division II ball player. Back in the day, as a teenager, so to speak, he was a second-team All-Big South selection as a senior infielder at Liberty, and then earned his bachelor's degree in sports management from Liberty back in the year 2000. That's right, a brand new century. And his master's in sports administration a couple of years later at James Madison in 2002. Now, he began his coaching career while a graduate student at James Madison, and he served as he's a volunteer assistant coach from 2001 to 2003 before gaining a paid assistant coach position. Of course, those are always the good ones, the ones that are paid, right? Yeah. He stayed at JMU through the end of 2011, and during that time, he was promoted to associate head coach in 2008 with increased responsibilities for the program. So you can see he continued to build his career. After a short break from coaching baseball, he joined Biola University in April of 2013 as their head coach, and he helped the team transition from an NAIA member institution to, yes indeed, NCAA Division II program. Resigned his position in late 2018, so about 4 years ago, and then in his 4 or 5 seasons at the helm, he led his team to a 137 overall record. That's right, and even 500. And 3 consecutive 30-win seasons in postseason berths. So really continue to improve and improve and improve. Then he joined some team called the Texas Rangers. Ever heard of them? You got it. The baseball team right here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, based in Arlington. Joined them in late 2019. Was scheduled to be a coach for the Hickory Crawdads in 2020 before something called COVID-19 hit us all. Yeah. And that kind of shut down the minor league season. And then he managed the ACL Rangers in 2021. Development coach of Hickory in 2022, and here at the end of 2022, where is he? With Nina and Scott. Yeah. So how's that for an introduction, Coach? Did we get it all right?
That's great, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of years.
Yeah, it is a lot of years. As you look back on your, before we get into some of the questions that Nina and I have for you, as you think back in time, is there one thing that, after all that I've just shared with our audience, one thing that comes to mind that you're really most proud of, that you think to yourself as a kid, maybe wanting to be a baseball player or be involved as a coach, but just like the sport of what baseball was all about, you thought, wow. And now here, all these years later, all that you've just done, or all that we just shared with the audience that you've done, one thing that comes to mind that you're proudest of?
Yeah, you know, that's a tough question. I think I would just say the relationships. You know, when you look back on the years, you get texts from guys from various times or hear about, a player that is having a child or, whatever it might be. I think it's the relationships probably that stand out.
Well, yeah. We're talking about mental wellness in sports and life. So I tell you what, you want to kick it off here?
Well, yeah,
You're the one with a PhD at the end of her name, right?
Well, Jay, I know this is something important to you, mental wellness and just mental health overall. And has this been something that you've, been invested in throughout your coaching and through as an athlete? Is this something that you've always invested your time in, or is this something more recent for you?
No, it has been. I think for everybody in some capacity, maybe you don't realize it's something you're focusing on. But I think we're all fighting to get ourselves in a good place, right? Mm-hmm. To feel good about what we're doing, to feel like we're making a difference in what we're doing. Mm. And I think getting into coaching, was that for me. I was a pretty good player, but I think I ended up having more success helping others get the best out of themselves. Mm-hmm. And so as you do that, as you work with people and you talk with players, you talk with other coaches, you get in the hole with them, so to speak. And I think as you start going down those roads and those relationships get deeper and you try to accomplish and achieve more, you run upon so many other challenges within relationships and within people's lives. And so I think the whole idea of being healthy is at the forefront because, wanting to be productive in the culture and society we have it's a part of it. Yeah. But you can't do that without health. And so, yeah, it certainly has been a part of my entire journey for good and for bad. So
Let me follow up on what you just responded to Nina about. As you look back, it was 20 years ago, 2 decades, that you graduated with a master's degree from James Madison. I just wondered, as you got involved as a coach, what are maybe the one or two things that stand out most about how athletes today are compared to what they were when you and I were playing or growing up, with all the mental illness and all that's gone on in our country, especially through COVID and everything? The athletes in a lot of ways are different, especially some of the young people coming up. What comes to mind, or what are some of the things that you really now have to focus on that maybe were not top priorities a few years ago when you first started?
I think technology, phones in general, probably change a lot about the way we look at ourselves and the way we interact with culture. I think kids in general, their attention spans can be different. It's not across the board, but as a whole, you can see that being different. The way that you work with them and connect with them has to be has to meet them where they're from. And so I would probably say that technology is a lot different, and kids' expectations about how they're viewed and how you interact with them and how you go about getting them better. And I think that the common thing said is that they're maybe a snowflake kind of culture, maybe that's said in a negative fashion. I don't know if that's altogether true. I think it's just different. Just like anything over time, you have to adjust, and so athletes today are better in a lot of ways, and at the same time they're very introspective. I think they look deeply within themselves because they're caught looking at themselves all the time and getting told how they are so often, that I think it spirals into maybe a little bit different, as you're saying, than it once was. It's not as simple or as clean as it seemed to be. Now there's just a deeper layer to it.
I like what you just said when you just said you just have to meet them where they're at. And you also mentioned relationships earlier. And it seems like you're really good at cultivating these close relationships with athletes, and it's very important to you. There's a lot of coaches that struggle or because of their own stress or their own worries or their own expectations on themselves. How do you manage to instill these deep relationships with these athletes? Because I think this could be really helpful for those listening that are struggling with that.
Yeah, I think, ultimately, relationships are the essence of I think what we're created to do as people, right? We being alone is what you really struggle with. So you ultimately are looking for a connection in some capacity.
Yeah.
And so, I think as a coach, baseball is an easy one. Baseball is something that people love. And so kids get immersed in this thing. And I've just seen over time, as you're able to add value to something that they are so passionate about, and they're looking for value from. If I can add value in that area, it immediately endears you toward them in some capacity. And so I think beyond that, I think it's, just a concept of deep humility where you're looking to esteem others as greater than yourself. When people value you, when people are able to build you up in the direction that you want to go or are trying to go, people look for that. They want that. They're going to feed off of that. And so I think building relationships is just that. It's meeting people where they're at and trying to add value or increase value in the areas that, hopefully you can help them in.
Mm-hmm. Do you have children of your own, Jay?
I do. I've got four kids. My oldest is in college and my youngest is a 7th grader.
Boys, girls?
Oldest is a boy, and my 3 next are young ladies. So.
No, are they involved in sports as much as your son might be?
Yeah, they all do play sports. My son, he actually attends Liberty University. So we're actually, my wife and I met.
Right.
He's not playing baseball currently. He's in pursuit of physical therapy degree. He's kind of jumped all into that, graduated with kind of a dual enrollment kind of thing. And then my daughters are all involved with sports as well, though. My oldest daughter is a soccer player and got a volleyball track athlete as my next one. And then my youngest plays a little bit of everything. She's actually doing a little basketball right now in season, but also plays a lot of soccer as well.
Well, that's great because that leads me into where I was going with the whole question in the first place. You've got a son that's the oldest. You've got 3 younger girls. Everybody in some way, shape, or form has been involved in sports, whether it's through PT, physical therapy, or as you said, your 3 daughters are involved in sports. So I just wondered, what were the most, sharing all the incredible information you've told us so far, what are the things as a dad, as a parent, maybe more importantly, so to speak, at the home front, as a coach, what are the things that you were really, really making sure that you and your wife would share with your children about the importance of certainly being involved with a team and understanding your role as a member of the sports world? But what were the things that you wanted to make sure they knew that maybe a lot of dads who don't have the experience in a lot of ways like you do, that didn't share with their children? What were the things that were really top priorities? 3 or 4 things that come to mind.
Yeah, I think I would say, first of all, maybe I have some things to share because I haven't always done it the best. I can tell you as a coach, and always wanting to kind of drive and get the most out of people. Your kids are not your players, and so you're not going to coach your kids. From my experience, that's not the best method. I think as I've gone through it, I've learned to wear my dad hat, so to speak. That's my number one hat with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've learned as time has gone on to ask, hey, can I put on my coaching hat and give you some feedback about what I saw? Maybe later on, maybe after we've gotten some ice cream or we've hung out.
I like that.
Really tried to separate those two. It's hard, obviously when your mind is built that way and you're looking for how to help people improve. And you also, I think as a parent, so often, right, you have this attachment. You feel that your value is tied to your children's performance. And so if they're my kid, they have to do something unique or special. And if they don't, that reflects on me. And I think that's where you get into trouble. And so ultimately, I want my kids to, as you mentioned, ultimately the idea of being on a team and going through the process of suffering well, I think as an athlete, discipline, understanding the aspects of how that works, that's going to lend to success in so many other fields, whether or not they continue to play athletics, sports, whatever it would be. I think the community involved in those teams and how they interact with their teammates and their coaches and parents, those are the pieces that we really try to push into and help them with. And it's definitely hard, I think, for the factors you mentioned earlier, in terms of society being a little bit different the way things are set up. But that's how we try to do it. We want our kids to go about it as we want to ask them, how'd the game go for the team, and then we'll get into your individual performance. But yeah, that'd be a few things about parenting athletes and ultimately trying to love them, encourage them, and build them up in the things that God has given them to do.
Yeah, but most importantly, always be that dad. Good for you. That was a great answer, wasn't it?
No, it really was. And I love that you talk about family. And I think about the clients that I work with and trying to balance sports and school and everything else. And you've got 4 children, and there's a lot of anxiety and stress today amongst high school, college athletes. Do you find that around in your home, your own children managing their own anxiety? And then how, as a dad with your dad hat, how do you manage that and help them through that?
Yeah, that's ongoing.
Yeah.
Especially with 3 young ladies. It's a little bit different than my son. I don't have the experience of multiple sons. But I can tell you that from my experience of 1 son and 3 daughters, the ladies have a tendency to bring home a little more relational strife, let's say.
Yes.
And so, my wife and I spend a lot of time talking about, how we want to care for other people, namely our own sisters. And so in the midst of what we're doing. And so I think that's probably the messaging and the challenge that, that we kind of go through. It's that, we're wrapped up in wanting to be good, and maybe their coach didn't have a good conversation with them or didn't play them as much as they wanted, or whatever the situation is. We try to really push toward, did we communicate that well? How did you talk about that? Did you take, the issue you had to the source, to your other teammate or to the coach? You shouldn't actually be talking about it with me until, you've done that first. And so trying to kind of order, how do we do that as they prepare to go through life and have relationships with, their husbands and their wife? And, what does that look like? How do they do that well? Sports presents such opportunities to go through that. And I can say, it's certainly harder with your own kids because you get an even deeper level of it, so it's a challenge, but my wife and I together really attempt to try to, continue to direct them back to maybe how God, kind of calls us to care for people and communicate.
Yeah. And one of the things that you can apply with your children and with the athletes, and I like that you said this, is you just ask questions. Instead of giving them advice and telling them what to do, we just ask questions and let them figure it out. That's the best way sometime for the athlete too. So I like that you do that, and you just keep them. What's important is that they know you care about them. You said that's important, that they know that you care and you want to support them. So, yeah.
Really good. Now the questions for sure. The more you can get those brains turning and problem solving going, the better it'll be, right?
Right. And so now is this role, you've been with the Rangers now for is it about almost 4 years right now? Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, 2018.
What has been for you the biggest challenge when it comes to supporting their mental health and them talking and being open? What has been the most challenging for you in the role that you have?
I mean, I think, again, just being someone that really values relationship, being in an organization to this length of time, I'm beginning to see some more of that fruit over time, because relationships take time to create trust, to create depth that allow people to open up and really hopefully be able to take people places maybe that they didn't know they could go, or whatever it would be, your role as a coach that you try to help people do, unlock their best. And I think, being in the organization for this length of time now is certainly helping that a lot. A number of the players that I was with this past season, working with Carlos Cardozo, the manager, they were players that I've had, for now 3 years, for 3 seasons. Mm-hmm. And they got drafted and I worked with them and, talked through, and in many cases, things that were happening off the field. And from my experience, as you're able to, again, lend value to people in different challenging points in their life, then you're given more later. And so I think I was able to experience a lot of that through this season, spending, roughly 150 games working with players and traveling around the East Coast and playing baseball and having some success with that, but also dealing with, the things that we all deal with when we're away from our families and we're away from those that we love, and how we manage and balance those things and find ourselves pouring ourselves into baseball, but realizing there's a lot of other things here. How do we do that well together? I think creating healthy community is something that I'm really starting to see. I think the organization does a good job with it, with the people that we put around the players, but also the culture we attempt to create. And so I think that's what I've enjoyed being a part of and continuing to learn it. How important it is to establish a culture for these players when they walk into the clubhouse, when they communicate, even when they leave the clubhouse at night. How do we do that in a certain way? And I think Carlos set up a good environment in that regard. But I think obviously that was each of our roles as leaders and working with these players was, how do we help young adults, men, do their job really well, because we have to turn it over to them. They have to grab hold of this thing, and so creating an environment where they can do that. They can learn the things they need to, be empowered, and then move to that next level.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear what you just said. I just wondered sometimes what the pushback is. You're with, unlike, well, let's hear. Let me just take a minute here. You talk about the NFL in professional football. They're playing a maximum of 21 games if they go to the Super Bowl. You're the NBA and the NHL hockey in the National Hockey League. They're playing 4 times that on a regular basis just for their regular season, and then you double that. You're going from 80 up to 162 games a year. I mean, it's so you are almost like the wife or the spouse or the son, the dog. I mean, you're with them. There's no road trips for a professional NFL team. On a Saturday, they fly to the city they're going to play. They stay overnight. They get up, they play the game, and they fly back Sunday night. If they're playing a Thursday night game, they do it on Wednesday and fly back Thursday. It's much different. You're with them on the road, and you're with them literally 24/7. So I just wondered the dynamics of what you have to do, and really you get more involved, I would imagine, than somebody in your position on a football team or some other sport. Do you see where I'm going with that? And I just wondered, since you get to know them so well, since you're literally with them 24/7 when you're on a road trip, I just wondered what the pushback might be or the reception. You said a lot of these guys really, they come right at you, and I would hope they would. But you hear so many crazy stories about what's going on in our world today. I just wonder what the dynamic would be.
Yeah, no, really good question. I completely agree with you. And I think that's that's one of the things that's drawn me to baseball. It's, you play so many games, it's an everyday sport, as we talk about with the athletes so often, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to get through to them certainly about what we do on the field. I mean, obviously that's a priority, but the reality is they're going to spend all these hours away from us. How well are they preparing to come back to the field? Are they preparing themselves for the things they want to achieve? And we're talking about performance. Obviously, my job is to develop these young men in terms of their abilities on the field. But from my experience, those things happen even better and even exponentially more when you're able to reach them and in a place of health off the field. When their relationship maybe with their girlfriend isn't good, or something's going on with their parents. There's a million variables that come up over time, but when your relationship is as such that you're able to speak in and present a stable front, even being honest with the challenges that that a guy like myself would have with 4 kids and a wife, and I'm away from them just as you're away from those that and the complications of that, and how the extra effort I have to take to still be a part of my family and lead from afar, and be a part of that community. Those are things I think that you hope you're modeling, and you hope that you're doing well so that they're having that same success off the field. Because when things don't go well between the lines, or outside of between the lines, that's when I think it's really hard to keep things together between the lines. And so I think those healthy rhythms that I think as an organization we've been able to create, and are, my passion, really why I'm even able to be a part of this organization, is they desire to see those things cultivated. I love working within an environment where that's a priority, and you can reach these guys where, as you're saying, with all the time you're spending with them, you get to actually hit on some things that are going to go a lot deeper and a lot longer even than their baseball career.
Right. Great answer. Yeah. Great response.
Yeah. And you talk about your culture, and it seems like there's a lot of trust within the culture. And I'm just curious, how was that established? Because trust is not always easy to build. And so how did you create that? How did everyone create and cultivate trust in the organization? And what other things define your culture?
Yeah. I mean, I'll say, spending 17 years at the collegiate level, this has been a lot different professionally, working within an environment with so many. I think we have almost 62 staff in the minor league level. And most of those folks are experts in their field in some capacity. And that's a lot different than a college where, there's 1 or 2 more experienced guys, and then maybe some really, new people to the profession. You can have a 6 or 7, 8 person staff, these days, but back then it was probably more 4 or 5. And it's a lot different feel. And so it's really required that if you're going to be healthy, and you're going to have a healthy culture, that there's a real continuity between the staff, the way everybody works together. And I think I've seen that. It's been modeled well within this environment. I would also say, again, the manager I worked with, Carlos, did a really, really fine job of getting everybody involved. I mean, a guy like myself with, some years of experience, felt I was able to contribute those things in the role that I had, and that he was able to pull those things out. At the same time, a data analyst, for example, that, has been in the game for, a handful of years, also felt like he could contribute to a lineup, that was being built. And so I think it's when everybody feels like they're a part of something, and that's not just said, but that's modeled.
Yeah.
There's, little things from, inside the clubhouse, would have a policy that guys wouldn't sit on their stools ever facing into their locker. They always faced out, because this was us together. And, there are numerous other examples of that, but I think it's just an everyday, we're going to show up and we're going to meet each other every day. And how are we going to go about that? What does that look like? And it was a consistent effort to meet each player, to get to know each player, and to unlock the best in each player. I mean, we were expecting that, and that expectation got met, and the players carried it forward. And so you just saw it. Everybody got on board with it. And it was a community effort that everybody was involved in building the environment to be as good as we could all be, from, my role as a coach and where that might lead me, to each player and their opportunity to play in the major leagues and their dream of accomplishing that. Yet we were all a part of that together. So I think you could just feel it, that each person was doing their part.
Everyone feels valued, and I think the culture is so important. And for you all, it was daily, it was intentional, and it's the little things that you would do that would communicate they're important to you, they care about you. Just like you just said, the chairs and how they're going to be turned, and it's the little things that you do. And I think why this is important is because the way the culture is and the way the leadership is, it has an influence and effect on the athlete and their overall mental health. And it seems like you all have done a really beautiful job creating a really safe and secure culture of trust.
Absolutely. And I mean, you can feel the difference, when you're going to spend that much time, again, away from home, with a group of people. If you can create that kind of environment, instead of it being a grind, it's another family that you're with.
Yeah.
And so, that feel, I think allows everything to happen a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you what, we've only got a couple of minutes left, Jay, and I'm kind of curious. Both Nina and I, the questions that we've asked you, you've really had some great responses. So I think this has certainly been well worth my time, and I'm sure you would agree. I just wondered, though, if you might, as we close, share with us one story. I know as a broadcaster, on my keynote address that I give across the country, I use different examples of stories that I can share, and then others that I don't say who it was, but I'll use an example and tell a story about a particular athlete that I'd never mentioned the name of the team or anything like that, but people go, wow, I never knew that. Is there something that you might share with us without giving any private personal information away, but a story or a scenario that touched your life and you say, you know what I'm doing every day as this coach, I'm making a difference in these lives of these ball players. Is there a story that comes to mind or anything that you'll never forget?
Yeah, for sure. There was a player in particular that has been in the organization the same length that I have. And, that player, as he entered the organization, was really going through some turmoil within his family. And it wasn't long before that I had lost a member of my family. And so as he kind of entered in, this was really a point of real challenge for him. And so I was able to connect with him early on in his time in the organization. And through that time, our relationship has grown. But, his ability as a player, he was obviously brought in because he had a lot of ability, but that ability, the chance to unlock that really couldn't happen, I think, until he was at a place of, real health. And I'm not saying that I was the guy that did that. I'm just saying I was a part of his journey within the organization. And he has now had a lot of success, and he's someone that, I think the sky's the limit in terms of where he's going. But that all started with coming out of a real challenging point in his life and recognizing that I'd gone through challenge in my life, and then being able to connect with somebody. And it had nothing to do with, him hitting a ball or catching a ball or me being able to teach him those things. It was first relating to challenges that he had off the field that then unlocked the opportunity for him to even ask other questions about, baseball later on and other things, because he saw me care for him at a point that was important. And so, yeah, that would certainly be one that stands out to me. And, that player even actually had interaction with my family as they came over. And, he was really just kind of, he loved interacting and meeting my family because he had met me. And then he got to know my wife, who he'd heard a lot about. And then he got to meet my kids, who he'd heard me talk about a lot. And so it really became this relationship between even he and my family and him. And so, that's what it's about, that relationship. I mean, it carries so much strength that it carries you through other things, and it adds value in so many other ways. And I think that'd be an example that stands out to me, that, it's the reason that I do what I do. And even my wife feels like this is not something that I do, but something that we do. And so, those are the stories that I think that allow it to be possible for me to coach.
Well, good for you, because I tell you what, all the respect in the world for you. Those are the two things, trust and respect. And that's what it's based on. And obviously he was comfortable with your children, with your wife, with your whole family, because of the trust and the respect that he had for you. So hats off to you. That's really great stuff, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And just that you convey how much you care about the athlete and the people around you. And just before we go, because it seems like you're so grounded in where you're at and what you're doing. I'm curious if you could share with everybody, maybe what are a few things you do to practice overall self-care for yourself to help you with your overall mental health?
Yeah.
Boy, she's making you put it on the line right now, huh?
I would first first say, for me, my connection with God is really important. And so when there's a vertical relationship that's healthy, there's a lot of other things that can happen well. After that, I think it's a circle of people, right? There's people that you trust, that you've done life with over time, that you continue to check in with, that you talk through things that are coming up, that you don't just make decisions on your own. My wife and I are a team, and we work through, do we sign another contract? Do we do this again? These are all things that it's not just me. It's a group of people that I trust, that I know, that they know me. And so I think from friends to my wife, to my relationship with God, and then just constantly cultivating those relationships, and then I think spending intentional time taking care of your body and doing some of those other things as you get older are important as well, to just maintaining your ability to be in a good place, to give all that you need to give when you're asked to do it.
Wonderful.
Great
Thank you.
stuff.
Yeah.
Jay Sullenger, he has been our special guest with the Texas Rangers, and I tell you what, above and beyond. Had no idea. I've got a degree in psychology. She's the psychologist, and we had a pretty good idea of what we were going to be expecting here today. But I tell you what, this was above and beyond. I thought this was great.
Jay, thank you. Yes, I just think, overall, you just sharing the importance and value of relationships and community and connection is what it's all about today. And it really can be beneficial for our overall mental health too. So thank you for being here today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. Really a pleasure to spend this time with you and just to talk about the relationships we have and what God's done. Exciting times.
All right. Thank you again, and all the success, continued success, and enjoy the upcoming season.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so
Appreciate
much.
it.
Yep. Thank you. Well, you want to take us home and close us out?
And thank you for joining us for another edition of Conversations of Connection, Mental Wellness in Sports and Life. We will see you next time.
Stay well.